Hello and welcome to this episode of The Road to Recovery for the Southern Gold Coast. My name is Zac, and today in our final episode, we explore the road to recovery in the events industry on the Southern Gold Coast. Don't forget to stick it out right through to the end of this video, as I have a question for our viewers right at the end. And also joining us for this discussion is someone who sits on the forefront of the discussion for the Southern Gold Coast and its events industry and business advocacy. And that's CEO of Connecting Southern Gold Coast, Josh Martin. Josh, how are you today?
Great, thanks, Zac. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So I reckon we dive straight into it. There's a few people watching this who might not know who you are and the role that you've played on the Southern Gold Coast. It's a pretty big key role. So could you tell us what is your current role and what's your history on the Southern Gold Coast and what you've done?
Yeah, sure. I'm currently the CEO of Connecting Southern Gold Coast, and we are the council-funded entity or controlled entity looking after events, tourism and promotion and marketing for the Southern Gold Coast, effectively from Coromandel to the border here at Coolangatta. Largely, we play a role working with local. Big key part of that is events and major events, especially Cooley Rocks On, which is the largest event in the region.
Yeah, definitely. So Cooley Rocks On. I said in an earlier interview that I don't think you're a Gold Coaster if you haven't been to Cooley Rocks. Pretty cool event to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the cheapest way to get in a time machine and transport back to that era. My affinity with the event and the Southern Gold Coast. I mean, I'm a Gold Coaster born and bred, and I've lived on the Southern Gold Coast all my life. And I can even recall working in an Italian restaurant here in Coolangatta while I was doing my uni degree. And winter sun would roll around and the whole town would just come alive. And this is in a period of traditionally a low season in June. It's a little bit frosty for Gold Coasters. You might have to pull on the sweater. The whole town would come alive, buy into it. And it's just such a great theme to sort of relive those glory days of the 50s, 60s and 70s, which Cooley was really renowned for. It has that retro vibe. In fact, Southern Gold Coast really has this sort of, I suppose, a bit more of a laid-back retro vibe. And so it's just great to celebrate that through an event like Cooley Rocks On.
So talking about events like Cooley Rocks On, Bleach Festival, so much more, these are largely important for the Southern Gold Coast, but how important are these sorts of events to the broader Gold Coast economy?
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely critical to the economy. I mean, an event like Cooley Rocks On last year, because sadly this year our event was COVID affected, like many other events, but last year's event was a gross $8 million to Queensland, or $6.9 million direct and incremental spending to the region. And in a period where it's sort of a winter months, that is so important to local business to drive those tourism dollars in those months. So events play a massive role in economic development and business prosperity, especially for our region where, we rely on these events to support the tourism industry, where we don't have probably the big ticket items like the northern end would have in a theme park or big tourist attractions. We've got a great destination, great restaurants, great shops, great facilities, and it's those events that really make the town come alive. We obviously deliver Cooley Rocks On. We also deliver city events for Division 14 in the Christmas carols, New Year's Eve, fireworks, chicken lights up. But we've played a big role in supporting external events survive and prosper on the Southern Gold Coast. So things like you mentioned, Bleach was born from the Connecting Southern Gold Coast office, but Swell, Beach Rugby Fives, we support other major events in the region like the surfing and music concerts, and any event really that's going to be held on the Southern Gold Coast, we work with to try and leverage and ensure that the business community and our community, sees the benefit.
So what do you think the road ahead now looks like? We've seen the past. What does it look like going forward?
Yeah, look, I wish I had the crystal ball to know what it's going to look like, because there are some unknowns. But I suppose, look, it's probably allowed for some new, creative, and different ways for us to showcase events, and that's been really exciting to see the ingenuity and creativity of artists, be it Facebook live streams or setting up their own streaming platform, um, and sort of reassessing how they deliver events, and I think that will see us put in good stead for future events if we can take these learnings and incorporate that into events down the track when we can open up. I think we will be in a much better place because it's kind of forced us to take another look at some things. But I can't wait for us to get back to those live events. I think not only we touched on the economic benefit of live events to the community, but I think events provide much more than just economic benefit. I think they really add to our fabric of community, and it's coming together. That's that shared experience. It's getting out and celebrating that with friends and family. So I really want to see us get back to those live events. But if we can take some of the wins from what we've had to do through COVID, then I think then maybe we are better for it in the events industry, but it is a long road ahead. I mean, the events industry is really struggling. The entertainers are really struggling. Hospitality and tourism. It's a long way ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's very interesting. You should say that. Leads into my next question perfectly. Early measures meant that people were working from home. We were self-isolating. We learned how to adapt, how to move online. We've seen Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary traditionally something that couldn't be offered online, suddenly offering something online, which was great. They even moved their gala online, so you could stream into your home. There was streams going out to New York City and more across the world. So long term, do you think this will have an impact on reducing the industry as people realize they don't really need to go to these larger events in order to sort of experience them?
Yeah, look, it's a good point and an interesting question. I mean, that event, that live fundraising event that you talked about, Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary, I thought that Michael and the team did a fantastic job. I mean, it was really well put together, and I believe it raised comparable funds. And so there's certainly been events that have sort of shown that maybe we don't need to go to this live event, where there's ways that we can do this online, and I can see how that does tend to, at times, if you're suffering from the tyranny of distance, you can bring people on board for that event, be it in New York or in Melbourne. They can come and they can watch that event because it's streamed live. But I do think the future of events does need that live, or a large portion of those events do need that live element, that people are coming and they're attending and they're spending their money because we want to see those events support the community that they're in, and that people are going out to dinner and they're still spending dollars to support these industries that surround the event. So look, I'm not sold the future is purely online, but I think that's certainly identified some areas where we could do that. We could certainly do things like fundraising or some events online. And I think if there's a way you can combine both in the future, then hopefully that is the best thing to come out of it from the events industry.
What do you foresee being the biggest challenge facing the industry during the recovery phase?
Yeah, look, certainly it's when can we get back to mass gatherings, major events. It is a little scary to know that, where restrictions are easing, we are moving in the right direction, but we know we've had some recent setbacks. But, essentially major events and international tourism are probably one of the last areas to sort of come back online. And it's understandable. We're all gathering in a close proximity. So it poses a health risk. And I certainly think from an event organizer, there is somewhat of a liability. You owe it to your fans to provide a safe environment. So I know a lot of event organisers wouldn't want to take that risk until they have the support of all the medical advice. So there's the unknown of when can we have mass gathering events, and I suppose how long it takes us to get there, because there's certainly been a lot of lost revenue and income for entertainers, for suppliers, for people in the event industry. That's their whole workplace. That's where they drive their income from, who have lost that. I think I read on the workforce that was set up with a couple of our key industry affiliates, TEG, and there was a few other that it was estimated that the industry needs 650 million in order to survive. So that is a massive number, and it's only climbing the longer that we aren't able to have live events.
Yeah, and I think with COVID-19, a lot is changing, a lot is growing. We're heading into, it's sort of like the COVID-19 set itself up for a new financial year almost. It's like everything's just refreshed and new. So if I was a young entertainer heading into this new financial year, there's a new city budget, there's a new style of thinking for the events industry. What should I do now to prepare for the road ahead, or even what should I do now to sort of get a foot in the door and be a part of that road ahead?
Yeah, look, I suppose I'm coming from an event organizer perspective, a promoter perspective, rather than an artist, but I know there's some great initiatives out there. There was some grant programs. I know that Queensland government had the START grant program for independent creative artists and entertainers. So I would encourage or urge entertainers to look at all the options around grants and programs out there to to see what assistance is out there. There's also some great initiatives started around, I lost my gig, and I would encourage you, if you had a gig and you lost one, to register with some of those initiatives to make sure that we are capturing the real cost of COVID to this industry. But I'd be certainly looking at what opportunities there are out there. I know that events will come back online, but it's how long. It might be bunkering down, but I really applaud some of the artists that have got out there and streamed their content. I mean, Facebook Live is a really affordable way to get your content out there. I saw one of our great local artists in Casey Barnes did his own stream for an album launch, and I think Amy Shark is also doing the same, which they're fantastic initiatives. So if you can find some creative ways to just get your content out there, things like YouTube, Facebook Live, then I think entertainers are putting their best foot forward, and when events come back online, you're in a great place. But look, and I suppose, yes, major events might be a little while off, but that's why I also think smaller events and local events are so critically important as well, which may assist us to sort of come back online before, say, full caps are lifted. But supporting local events in your community, spending your dollars with local business in your local environment is so critical to making sure our city, that you can not only live here but work here, is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's a big road ahead. It's an interesting one, the events industry with COVID-19, because it did get hit really incredibly hard, but it's not been at the forefront of the discussion, simply because I think hospitality, tourism, they tend to take over and dominate that discussion. But events, I would almost say, was hit even harder with the fact that it was hit earlier, and it's going to be longer to recover than most other industries.
Yeah, completely agree. And I mean, I've heard the stories of those that are in the gig industry that may not qualify for the job keeper or the job seekers. So, or certainly not job keeper. And so that's really hurt those entertainers that might have been a casual at a cafe and doing their gigs. And there hasn't been a lot of, event-specific assistance through government initiatives. There's probably several smaller ones, and I think that's why, I think it's a great initiative of some of our larger industry bodies forming the pitch to the federal government around the $650 million recovery package for the live event industry. But you're absolutely right. It probably hasn't caught the headlines like aviation or tourism, but it is, events are they're critically important to our economy, and especially now given our city has identified that that's the way forward through Major Events Gold Coast. We're hoping those restrictions lift soon, because I suppose if they don't lift soon, I saw the council budget was released yesterday. $9.3 million is earmarked for Major Events Gold Coast. We absolutely hope they can go ahead soon, but should they not, then I would want to see some of those dollars put to other initiatives that support local businesses and our economy. Especially, look, I am biased for the Southern Gold Coast, but ensuring that those events and that economy and those dollars are spread equally across the city.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one because with the history of the Gold Coast City Council, you've got the Northern Gold Coast was amalgamated into the Gold Coast in the 90s. There's a lot of work needed to be done. Now the big question is, as we have been amalgamated for some time, where are we with the Southern Gold Coast? We sort of got left behind there. So yeah, I completely agree. I think once we see that investment, whatever's sort of left over per se, we should really be investing that on the Southern Gold Coast, as our identity here is really unique, very, very unique, should be protected. We should really sort of encourage that identity because it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Southern Gold Coast is a great place for major events. It's a great place for events. And I think what is critical is that it does complement our lifestyle, and that we get the right events, we get quality events, and that we continue to receive those events with the new amalgamation. That's why I think as Connecting Southern Gold Coast winds up in a week, it's so important that bodies like the Chamber of Commerce, our local divisional councillor, Gail O'Neill, does a great job in ensuring the South still gets share of voice. But I think it's important that we still come together and ensure that our region that we love so much, as I said, I'm biased. It's the most beautiful end of the coast, but we want to make sure that we still get our share of voice in our events and our dollars spent this end.
Yeah, I completely agree. We may not have the nightlife, but we definitely have the better beaches, the better people, the better cafes, and probably the better Chamber of Commerce. But I too might be a little bit biased there, just a little bit. So my final question to yourself is, as restrictions ease, let's get to know you a little bit more. What are you most looking forward to doing or returning to as they do ease?
I am most looking forward to live music and live events. Unfortunately, I also suffered, aside from some of our events being COVID affected and not able to go ahead, like Cooley Rocks On was our 10th anniversary year, so it's such a shame. We've done all the planning not to be able to deliver that event, but I myself am, as an event tragic, am looking forward to getting out and having, being in a sea of other people and listening to live music. I did have my my tickets, which were paid for to Coachella this year, cancelled.
Oh.
So unfortunately, I had to cancel my trip to the States, but I'd love to go to large events, see live music. So I just can't wait to the day that I can at least get back to that and get to other major events and just enjoy it and put COVID behind us. But sadly, I think we're going to have to incorporate it into our daily life for some time.
Josh, on behalf of everyone, thank you for all the hard work you've done for our community on the Southern Gold Coast, everything you've been able to deliver for us. It is terrible news, I would say, that you weren't able to be a part of delivering Cooley Rocks On, but your legacy will continue, I think, in the way that it's done, and our community can't thank you enough.
Thank you very much, Zach. Much appreciated, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you to all those who have tuned in to this episode and our previous episodes. As I said at the beginning, this is our last episode in the 5-part web series discussing the road to recovery for the Southern Gold Coast. If you enjoyed this series, we'd love to hear from you below. Please comment below if you would like to see something like this happen again in the future, and we'll try our best to deliver to ensure that we can keep communications going and advocacy at the peak for the Southern Gold Coast business community. As always, don't forget to like our Facebook page, share this video with your friends. You can subscribe to our weekly newsletter via our website. We're going to give you all those updates weekly as to what's happening in our community. And finally, don't forget, if you want to be a part of this Southern Gold Coast business community, if you want to keep connected with the Southern Gold Coast business community, you really do need to sign up as a member of the Greater Southern Gold Coast Chamber of Commerce. You can do that via our website, and we'd absolutely love to have you. Please comment below. Let's continue this discussion. Would you like to see something like this continue in the future? Until next time, thanks for watching.